Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. I've got a great story for you all today, and I hope it'll inspire you as much as it did me. Today's guest is the CEO of Reflektive, Rajiv Barrera. Now, he's the former Disney executive who had the dream job and life, but he decided to follow his true calling and left his lucrative position at Disney to find a better way of delivering performance reviews. Yes, that's right, you did hear me right, performance reviews. But the gamble paid off, and he's since killed this process for the Silicon Valley elite, from everyone from Pinterest to Jawbone. So I invited him on the show today to share his story and his insights, and why more companies are actually enabling their employees to be in charge of their own growth as we continue down this road of digital transformation. And that's why Reflektive, the real-time performance management platform, has developed new features designed to empower managers and employees to take a more active and agile role in optimising individual and team performance. Essentially, the software unburdens HR teams from those dreaded admin tasks, so they can actually focus on creating fluid, agile teams that they're able to quickly shift and innovate as new technology infiltrates the workplace. But I don't want to give too many spoilers away now, so buckle up, hold on tight, as I prepare to beam your ears all the way back to San Francisco so we can speak with CEO Rajiv Barrera to discuss how new HR tools can empower an entire organisation to be more responsive to changing market demands and ultimately improve overall business performance. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hi, yes. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Rajiv Barrera, and I am the founding CEO of Reflektive.
Now, like you said there, you are the CEO of Reflektive, but you're also a former Disney exec. And I think you left a lucrative position at one of the top businesses in the world to find a better way to deliver performance reviews. Now, can I take you back in time? I mean, did you feel at that moment that you needed to go your own way? And can you still remember the feeling of, am I doing the right thing here? And did anyone stop or try to talk you out of following your own path?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a fun story. I grew up kind of in Los Angeles, went to Berkeley, and then worked at a bunch of startups the first kind of 10 years of my career. And I landed at Disney for, roughly 4 years. And I was running a marketing team at Disney, and I was getting very close to being promoted to being a vice president of marketing at Disney. And I was relatively young, I was 29-ish. And I realized at that point, I'd been working so hard to kind of get to the next level, and get promoted at every job. And I felt like I was almost at the end of my path, and that my job would basically stay the same afterwards. And that was kind of one of the things where I started rethinking about my path. I was like, wow, I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. When I was younger, I was thinking about starting my own company, and now I'm just kind of going to be doing the same thing for the next 35 years. And that really kind of freaked me out. So that's when I started thinking about just changing my career up. So the first thing I did was I moved out of marketing, and I started running a mobile gaming division within Disney. And then at that point in time, though, I just kind of opened my mind up to different things, and I started thinking about ways of, getting back into the original path that I wanted to take when I was, graduating from college, which was to start a company. And then I kept my eyes open, and I went down that path. So to me, it was actually almost avoiding a scarier path of just redundancy and doing the same thing over and over again. And I did, I was super comfortable at Disney. I was doing pretty well there. And luckily, one of the main reasons I probably left, I'm very different than most founders, and I think I'm much more risk averse than most founders are. And what actually pushed me, and who actually pushed me, was my wife. She had her own startup at the time, and it was very early stage, and we were reliant on my salary for her startup to kind of get off the ground at Disney. And then after a while, she was able to raise funding and have her own salary. And then she pushed me to then go ahead and do my own thing. So she actually really, really helped me kind of feel comfortable from a family perspective, giving up the salary and going full-fledged into a startup. And I think that's one of the big hurdles for founders that are, past, a certain age where they know that they have to start kind of, thinking about their family. And that makes it harder to leave and start a company and, take a huge risk. But my wife was super supportive and helped push me towards that.
It makes such a difference to have someone that's completely supportive that will encourage you to follow your path as well. And it seems that you two guys have got the perfect teamwork thing going on there. And there's another word you mentioned there. You were very comfortable. And nothing stops you from growing or progressing than just being comfortable and just plodding along through life. So it's a fantastic story. The other words that I've got to mention here are performance review. And they will make most people listening wince, because it's seldom done the right way, and it can often demotivate staff rather than motivate them, and has the completely opposite effect. And you've helped kill this process for the Silicon Valley elite, from companies such as Pinterest to Jawbone. But can you offer listeners an insight on why more companies are enabling their employees to be in charge of their own growth as we continue in this digital transformation? And also how you tackle things differently at Reflektive?
Yeah, no, definitely. And, starting at Disney, we did performance reviews annually at Disney. And I went through that process, three or four or five times. And it was just a dreadful process. Yeah. It was so dreadful. It was dreadful when I was more of an employee and I didn't have too many direct reports. And then at the end of it, I had 85 people reporting into me. And it was even more dreadful as a leader, just getting through all of that and then, giving everybody, a review and then giving them a raise that, was, 1 to 2% of their salary, which wasn't motivating at all, even when they were doing well. And then when they weren't doing well, yeah, it was just the whole process was just so stressful for everybody involved. And everyone was, looking at it in apprehension and then just dreading it coming up. So I started Reflektive to really kind of change that process. It just didn't seem like it was something that was adding value for lots of companies and employees. So you think about the leaders who wants to do it? The leaders, the HR team, the management. And really it is the management's trying to figure out a way of stack ranking and ranking people so they can pay them accordingly. And it's the only process they came up with for doing that, and it's been around for 30 plus years. But really, it just demotivates so many people because you're basically stamping everybody as a number, right? Yeah. And you think about the reason why it doesn't work is, and why it's not worth it to do at most companies, is because the way people give out raises and whatnot. You give a lot to your top 10%. You might kind of have to manage out your bottom 10%, but the middle 80%. You're not really doing much with them in terms of giving them a salary or whatnot. But through the performance review process, you're stamping them all as threes or average. So you're basically telling 80% of the company, hey, you're average. Keep working. And that's super demotivating. You think about it, it's not worth it. That whole process just to tell 80% of the people who you're not going to give a huge raise to, who you're not going to let go, that they're average. To demotivate that middle 80%, that's just not worth it. There had to be a better way that doesn't stress out employees and take so much time. I think Accenture said they spent 2 million hours doing performance management.
Yeah, it's insane. I've worked at a couple of places as well where they have that old 1 to 5 rating scale. And there seems to be a rule as a manager where nobody is allowed a 5 out of 5. Because if you get a 5 out of 5, then you shouldn't be in that role because you're too good at it. So nobody gets a 5. And that kind of leaves you with 4, but then you've got to be above and beyond, which not everyone can fit into that. I would say most people don't. So then that leaves you 2, you're underperforming, or 3, you're average, like you say. And then when people get that 2 or 3 out of 5, they're not going to take it well, because we're in a world now of Amazon reviews and TripAdvisor reviews. You wouldn't book a holiday that was 2 out of 5 or buy a book that was rated 2 out of 5 or 3 out of 5, would you? So it's just going to, like you say, demotivate people.
Definitely. There have been studies I believe Eli Lilly put together a study where they measured the employee engagement of employees before and after they received their rating. And they had a 5-point rating scale. 1 was the lowest, 5 was the highest, like you're mentioning. And when they looked at it for each group, the 5s before and after didn't see a change in engagement, so it didn't even go up for them. The 4s and 3s, it actually went down for 3 to 6 months. Their engagement went down following getting their rating, and then it would come back up. But you actually slow down performance and disengage people for 3 to 6 months. And the 1s and 2s, they drop dramatically and they never come back. So really, you're causing a huge amount of disengagement, and you think about the productivity loss that's happened because people are disengaged. It's a lot of productivity, and at large companies, people aren't actually even as worried about retention as they are about disengagement, because you end up, it's so hard to fire people at like a Disney, where then if someone's underperforming, you just kind of keep them there, and then they don't really do much or produce much. So you're paying for a lot of people who are not working because they're demotivated.
Yeah. When you go on to the productivity thing that you mentioned there a few moments ago, if you do end up in the realms of performance management, that is so time consuming and demotivating as well, isn't it?
It's completely time consuming. If you think about, your manager, you have 4 or 5 direct reports, that's a good, 2 hours to write each review and then sit down with everybody and then field questions afterwards and then think about everything, compile everything. It's basically an impossible process. If you think about the process of how it's engineered, it's impossible for a manager to sit down and then remember what happened over the full year for each of their employees when they have not been taking notes for that whole year, right? So then they just don't remember what's happened. And then they have to comb through their emails, ask other people, and then they spend all this time. And in the end, they usually just kind of re-summarize the self-review that their employee writes themselves, which is such a disservice to the employee because, as an employee, you're working so hard trying to get your boss's approval, and you realize, hey, your boss hasn't even been paying attention to you. And it's not that they haven't completely not paid attention to you, but they're not going to remember, unfortunately. And that's a harsh reality for people to realize. And they see that when they see their review that their manager writes. It's basically a kind of a reflection of the self-review. So, it becomes super demotivating for both sides, and it takes so much time.
Yeah, I think we've only just scratched the surface there. There's so many problems in that world of HR, and it's easy to see why many think that the HR department is ripe for disruption. I mean, those archaic processes and clunky software all need addressing as a priority. And that's why I invited you on today, because you seem to be doing just that with Reflektive. So can you tell me more about how you think HR tools can actually empower the entire organisation to be more responsive to changing market demands and ultimately improve overall business performance, both of which are key for excelling during that digital transformation that everyone's talking about at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the founding principles that, got me to leave Disney and start Reflektive was more of a philosophy than even the product, which was and is now a core value of the company of Reflektive right now. And it's called the value is called humans, not resources. And it's kind of flipping HR around on its head. Because when you think about, human resources, it's a very kind of it's not a very humane way of thinking about your employees.
Yeah.
You're thinking of them as resources. So I have my 10 cattle, I have my 8 barrels of oil, and I have my 8 humans. It's it's not kind of a modern way of thinking about your employees. It's kind of reversing back to the time period where you're working in a mill or something like that, where output was all that mattered. You didn't have to worry about your employees and engaging them. So really what we try to think about is how do we look at these HR processes and change them from what they are now, which are mostly compliance-driven processes. Even if you look at learning as an HR space or engagement, performance management, they're all very just compliance-based processes that aren't built really to add value for the employees. So as a company, Reflektive is trying to not only kind of build software to enable growth, employee growth, but also to redefine the core purpose of all these HR processes so that the goal is to help employees thrive at work.
So we've already talked about the problems there, and rather than just meet with employees a few times a year and ask them how they're getting on with their targets, you actually created a solution by implementing mentorship and continuous feedback, so all of employees could meaningfully develop as individuals throughout that 12-month period. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how it's been received by other companies?
Yeah, so Reflektive started 4 years ago, and really the big thing we were trying to do is we're trying to make employee development part of the culture and fabric of various companies. And we think, when you think about you're the best manager you've had, they've given you a lot of feedback along the way. They're very kind of insightful. They think about, what you're doing well, what you're not doing well. They pay attention to all of that. And then, when you have your one-on-ones and whatnot, they give you feedback and they help you consistently improve and consistently give you feedback so that you can improve. And typically that's very motivating when your manager does that, because it's a signal that they're investing in you and that they want you to grow and they see potential in you. So we designed Reflektive to do just that. One of the key innovations we built with Reflektive is it's integrated into your Outlook or your Gmail or whatever email client you're using, so that whenever you do have feedback for somebody, you can easily take a note on it or send it directly to them. So we built this product with, the idea that we want to make it frictionless and in the workflow without disrupting what people are doing, so that it can be part of the day-to-day culture and the way people work day-to-day. And a lot of that came from some work we did at Disney, where when I was building games at Disney, we did a lot of studies around how you get people to interact with different products and when they want to do it and how they want to do it. And based off that research, that's kind of how we came up with this idea of, hey, let's just integrate Reflektive into the daily workflows that people are already doing. What applications are they already using? And then make it easy for them to get feedback from there.
So do you think your management experience actually prepared you for being a startup founder, or do you think nothing can prepare you for that startup life?
Yeah, nothing can really prepare you. There are different kind of like parts of being a founder. The one part that management did help me prepare me for is just managing a lot of people. Reflektive, started with just me, but now there's roughly 130 people. And at Disney I managed 85 people, so that was a great experience for me, just to understand that as the company scales, the complexities are people more than anything else, right? People and processes, but the people part is something that I was able to kind of feel comfortable with earlier because of my previous experience. But everything else is completely new and not even close to anything I've done before.
I love it. Now, you initially created Reflektive to solve those employee performance management problems, which we've talked about, and all those significant issues that I think you've tackled perfectly there. But I'm curious, are there any others that you feel compelled to go after now, based on feedback from your own clients who are saying, actually, can we tackle this problem too?
Yeah, at a high level, the other kind of larger HR processes we've thought about, and we're conceptualizing, if it makes sense to go after. But in terms of how employees learn at work and how they train, how you improve employee engagement at work, there's a lot of different kind of arenas that we're exploring. There's a lot of kind of stopgaps and issues with current processes that we're currently conceptualizing. It's all kind of early stage. But we hear a lot from our customers on, other pain points and other processes that don't add as much value as they cost.
I think another problem that we come across is culture change. I mean, everything we're talking about here, we know what the problems are, and your software is addressing some problems. But for it to work, entire corporate cultures need to change and evolve with the times. So are you seeing more and more companies moving away from the traditional corporate practice and embracing that culture of consistent feedback? Or are you still getting some that respond with the words like, we don't have time to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We think of most companies as on a continuum where they're all trying to slowly evolve their performance management processes.
Yeah.
And because of that, we actually built a full suite of products. Real-time feedback, which I've been talking about primarily, which is ongoing real-time feedback from your workflows, is one product. Another product is kind of an agile way of managing objectives and making sure that everybody's on the same page and agile to market changes and can change your focus based off that and priorities. Another product is what we call a check-in conversation product, which is kind of a way to scale people management and good people managers by scaling kind of better one-on-one conversations. And then we actually already also built like a full-fledged performance review product. And we did that because, it takes some companies time to shift over from the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things. So because of that, we built the whole kind of product suite, including performance reviews. And everybody we're talking to, we never get pushback on the philosophical belief that performance should be kind of done more often and feedback should be given more continuously. But it does take time to change manage, and that's the apprehension for some people. I think some people haven't, this is a newer thing, and some people haven't seen it work at their, with their peers and their companies because they haven't installed it yet. So it's kind of new, and a lot of people will wait till more people have done it. So you see people kind of slowly doing it and moving over slowly. So they'll do reviews and they'll add real-time feedback, and then they'll move away from reviews and they'll add check-ins. So it's kind of a progressive move over. And then, and that's how it was 2 years ago. And, now it's actually accelerating where now more and more people are doing it. We have over 400 customers who have made the switch over. And now we're seeing it getting a little more aggressive, but there's still people at the earlier stages of the continuum, but we're seeing people accelerate through it a lot faster.
So what are the main things you're going to be focusing on at Reflektive this year? And is there anything else that you can share with us today?
Yeah, so we're just continuing to dive deeper into solving, how do we solve people management? So in terms of, a lot of these HR processes, they've been focused around, compliance and things like that. But what we're trying to solve for is the fact that, if you can solve for strong management and leadership muscle, and you can keep the company super agile, it's a huge business benefit. And we're seeing, companies being disrupted every day now. The market's changing so quickly. You just think about Amazon and how many companies Amazon has disrupted. They're about to disrupt the grocery industry. And when they do, they put huge companies out of business, and Fortune 500 companies are just kind of going out of business because of Amazon. So a lot of these companies, they need that management muscle where they have managers who are super motivated. They know how to manage and motivate their employees, and they know how to kind of turn a really big, stubborn organization and turn it into an agile organization, so that if the market dynamics change, they can change with it. And that's hard to do when you're working at a large company that's been the same for a long time and hasn't had to innovate or change. So we're working on kind of better processes within our tool to help kind of managers do that.
So if we do have any HR directors or HR managers listening wanting to find out more information about yourself and about Reflektive and everything that we've talked about today, can you just point them in the direction of how they can find out more information, and equally contact a member of your team if they just have any additional questions?
Yeah, definitely. You can always go to reflektive.com and there's a contact us page right there.
Fantastic. What I love about what you're doing there is we all know the problem of performance management, and let's be honest, how it doesn't work in its current form. And we're on the opposite side of the Atlantic here, and we've had identical experiences in the same situation. But rather than just complain about it, you've gone out and created a solution in this real-time performance feedback platform. But even then, it's not about the technology, it's about helping companies invest in people. So I can't thank you enough for coming on and taking the time to share that story with me today. And so thanks for coming on. And also a big thank you to your wife for making this possible too. We can't forget her.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I appreciate the time.
What a great story now. I love how he was doing a great job in one of the world's biggest companies at Disney, but still feel compelled to follow his own path, and also with the full support from his wife. But more than anything, I love how even the likes of Disney struggle with the dreaded performance review. We all know the traditional system doesn't work, and it plays a big part in actually demotivating staff. Managers hate it for being so cumbersome and time-consuming, and the whole experience is something that I'm glad I left behind to do my own thing. So hopefully my appraisal or performance management days are gone forever now. But for everyone else, we should champion Rajiv from Reflektive for literally risking it all to improve that process. But what are your thoughts about today's show? What Rajiv has done there and what he's achieving with Reflektive? Or how your company is managing performance reviews may be better than the traditional norm. As always, email me at techblogwriter@outlook.com or tweet me at Neil C. Hughes. But that's it from me, gang, so have a fantastic weekend, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.